But first tonight to the major breaking news. Israel is on the brink of a deal with Hamas to see the return of 33 hostages in exchange for a 6-week ceasefire and the release of a reported 1,000 Palestinian criminals. Joe Biden and Donald Trump have confirmed that a deal is very close, perhaps even hours away.
We are very close to getting it done. And they have to get it done. If they don't get it done, there's going to be a lot of trouble out there, a lot of trouble like they have never seen before. And they will get it done. And I understand there's been a handshake and they're getting it finished, and maybe by the end of the week. But it has to take place.
We're on the brink of a proposal that I laid out in detail months ago, finally coming to fruition.
And just before coming on air tonight, I learned that Qatar is expected to, tonight our time, within hours, hold a press conference to give an update on the hostage deal. We don't know whether they will be confirming that Hamas has come to the table. But the moment we see our beautiful hostages back on Israeli soil, free, well, it's going to be a feeling unlike any other. Joy, elation, the celebrations will be unimaginable. There won't be a dry eye. But as we sit here, let's not pretend this is the deal we all wanted. The reality is, in order to bring innocent children and mothers and girls home, Israel has had to do a deal with the devil. A deal with the devil. Is it the perfect deal? No. Is it even a good deal? No. No one can walk away from this and say, what a great deal. It's just simply not. What we want, what would be a good deal, is the return of our hostages, all of them, without having to release a single Palestinian terrorist from jail. That is what's right. That is what's ethical. There's no equivalence between the Palestinian criminals held in Israeli prisons and the innocent Israelis kidnapped from their beds in their pajamas by bloodthirsty savages on October 7. There is no equivalence. The Israelis are certainly not prisoners of war. They should never have been kidnapped and taken hostage in the first place. They're blameless victims of a terror organisation that has somehow absurdly captured support in the Western world. There must be total clarity on this point. A 9-month-old baby is not a prisoner of war. A 4-year-old boy is not a prisoner of war. A mother of 2 beautiful children is not a prisoner of war. None of the hostages are. And anyone who claims otherwise is wrong, anti-Semitic, and as hateful as those barbarians who stole them from their homes, beds, and loved ones. So in the first stage of this deal, women and children, the elderly and the sick will be released. They're being called humanitarian hostages. You have to shake your head and wonder, how is it that women and children are still being held in Gaza tunnels at all? Where's the Red Cross? Where have the aid organisations been, the human rights organisations? This should make all of us furious, and I'm sure it does. Yet it seems this is the deal we have waited 15 months for. The release of 33 Israeli hostages, and we don't even know how many will be returned alive. That's 2/3 of the hostages. Around 66 people will remain in Gaza in captivity. Again, we don't know how many are alive for certain. Now, in exchange for just 33 hostages, there'll be a 6-week ceasefire where Israel stops fighting, withdraws troops from most areas of the Gaza Strip, and large numbers of Palestinian criminals will be released from Israeli prisons. And some media outlets have reported that this figure will be 1,000. We don't know that for certain. The remaining hostages might be freed in a second stage of the deal. It's been reported that Israel will hold on to assets such as high-profile Palestinian terrorists and also some territory in the Gaza Strip to then use it as leverage during these second stage negotiations. Now, on the one hand, let's look at why this is not a good deal. On the one hand, well, how can this deal be agreed to when it's only 33 hostages and not all 100, or at least not all of who are alive? How can it be that Israel has been making inroads into Gaza for 15 months? It has Hamas on its knees with its leaders dead, and yet we still have to agree to release such a massive number of Palestinian criminals. I mean, is this what victory looks like? Releasing so many terrorists? The deal could also allow Hamas to rebuild. They can return to northern Gaza. They can stay in power for longer, and they'll have potentially around 1,000 terrorists to boost their ranks. And of course, we all know what happened with the case of Gilad Shalit. Hamas held him hostage for 5 years until finally he was released in 2011 in exchange for 1,027 Palestinian criminals in Israeli prisons. 1,027 Palestinians for one Israeli. That tells you how much we in the Western world and in Israel value life. But one of those terrorists released was Yahya Sinwar, who then went on to mastermind October 7, murdering thousands more Jews. So was the Gilad Shalit deal a good one in hindsight? And would October 7 have happened anyway, even without Yahya Sinwar's release? Or we just can't answer those questions. But you look back at World War II and you think, would you agree to a ceasefire with the Nazis in order to release those held in concentration camps? Again, we can't answer these questions, but we know that the Nazis had to be destroyed, and so does Hamas. One prolific Israeli advocate, known as Cheryl on X, said that this deal encourages hostage-taking and emboldens Hamas. She told me, and I'm quoting, this is Cheryl telling me this, "We sacrificed hundreds of soldiers' lives for nothing. This emboldens Hamas. Our enemies now know our weakness and that of the rest of the world. They will know to target other countries by taking hundreds of hostages." And there is some of this reaction coming out of Israel. But now let's look at the other side of the coin. On the other hand, what wouldn't you do to bring your baby home, your child home, your parent? There are no measures on this earth you wouldn't take if your loved one was kidnapped by terrorists. There's nothing you wouldn't do to hold them again and keep them safe. It's against the very principles of Judaism and just humanity. You would never abandon anyone to terrorists. So of course we must do whatever it takes to bring home our people. No one deserves the life of a hostage, and Israel and her allies, like America, like Australia, must do everything possible to return these innocent families, bring them to safety, and take them out of the grips of terrorists. Aviva Siegel, she was a hostage. She spoke to me about how hard it was to stay alive when she was in the Gaza tunnels. She was kidnapped from her bed, and Palestinians celebrated. They were rejoicing when she was dragged into Gaza. She was freed, but her husband, Keith, is still a hostage. We don't know if he's alive, but I know that Aviva will be praying and hoping with all of her heart that she'll be reunited with him soon.
The conditions were the worst conditions that you can think about. I just thought that I'm going to die, that Keith's going to die. What will happen if Keith will be in the bathroom and I'll die? Or what will happen if the ceiling falls on us? And if they shoot us? Or if they're going to starve us again? I want everybody to listen to my words. They aren't just words. It's what I went through and what the hostages are going through. They cannot allow themselves to open a door in their stomach and then close it when I stop talking. And
that was when I spoke to Aviva when I was in Israel on October 7. Now, Ilana Gritsewski, she's another former hostage. She was 30 years old when she was kidnapped. She was released, but her boyfriend is still in Gaza. Again, her life can't move on until he's home. I spoke to her about this again when I was in Israel. You've got beautiful photographs of Matan all around your apartment. But how does it feel knowing he is still in the tunnels after 1 year?
It's difficult with an empty bed and wake up and it's the same nightmare. It's continue. But I wake up strong because if the hostage can survive a year there and fighting for her life, as I need to wake up all morning to still fighting for them, so they come home, so they can come home.
And it's not just the families of each of the hostages who can't move on until they're home, it's all of Israel. And neither would Australia be able to function properly or any other nation on earth. So this deal is now expected to be announced this week, potentially within hours. So this is where we are right now. There will be relief, happiness at the return of women and children hostages. But as I said, this isn't a deal to unequivocally celebrate. It is a deal with the devil. And I wonder, couldn't there have been a better deal? Couldn't Joe Biden and now Donald Trump and Qatar and Israel have worked out a better deal? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been under incredible pressure, weekly protests, to come to an agreement with Hamas. And perhaps we won't know the ramifications of this deal for many years to come, even decades. But we must not lose sight of what's ultimately important, that Israel prevails and that families are reunited.